Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 Podcast. My name's Palm.
And I'm Andy.
And together, we are Crown and Passion 7. Hello, and welcome to another show. We have returning to the show our resident gentleman, Mr. Martin Green. But before we talk to him, we're going to do a quick wristwatch check. Martin, as our guest on the show, what have you got on the wrist?
Well, Palm, today I thought I would honor you two with a British watch. I'm actually wearing today an Isotope Hydrium X, the Judge.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Andy, what do you got on the wrist?
As you know, I've been doing the OP February challenge, rocking the 1007 for some time, and I think everybody is sick of hearing me talk about that watch. So today I have the Jean d'Ève skeleton on, which is a fantastic piece, quite a rare watch to find. And the good news is, if anybody really likes the watch, they're a little tricky to find, but if you do find them, the price point is extremely appealing. So you can maybe find this for between 300, 400 euros in great condition. And for that money, I think it's worth every penny. So, Palm, what are you rocking?
So today I've gone all out G-Shock GA2100, commonly known as the Cassiope. I've got it in the black version with the white indices and white hands. And solid as a rock, always reliable. A nightmare to change the time though, but it's just such a great watch to have. So that's what I've got on the wrist then. So, getting into the show, Andy, what are we talking about today then?
So, we always like to set ourselves a fun challenge. So, today's challenge, we decided to pick some underappreciated watches, or watches which we feel deserve more attention, across two different brands. So, we're going to pick two brands with two underappreciated watches and just discuss why we feel that way, why we feel they deserve some more love, and highlighting on the show today. So, as for guest, Martin, I would love to hear your first selection.
My first selection, well, it was quite a challenge because I do think that there are quite a few watches that are still underappreciated at this moment. I actually would like to start with the Omega Hour Vision. And I'm still surprised that this watch really hasn't caught on big time, because when it was launched in, I believe it was 2007, it was groundbreaking for Omega. One of the reasons was the movement. It was the first new manufacturer movement in the new style that Omega did, caliber 8500. Absolutely gorgeous caliber from a technical perspective, but also visually. And Omega really made the most of it because how they constructed the Hour Vision. What most people don't realize is they think that it has a sapphire case back and then it has sapphire inserts on the side. Actually, that is not true, because the inner section of the case is completely made of sapphire. So the sapphire is actually sandwiched between a metal bottom and a metal top. And the top, the bezel, is also where the lugs are connected. So in terms of design, it's really quite a spectacular watch. You could get it on a nice leather strap. They also made an amazing bracelet with it. Later on, they expanded the collection. First, it was a time only with a date. Then they also made like a very beautiful chronograph. And later on, they added the annual calendar as well. To me, it's one of the watches that really represents the modern Omega. But it's a watch that at least I don't hear people talk about. Honestly, I hardly ever see them in the wild.
No, I've never heard of it, to be honest. It's a DeVille, right?
Sorry. Yes, Barb. Yes, they made it. They made it indeed part of the DeVille collection. That also explains that it's a bit of a, I wouldn't say a dress watch. It's more like dressable. Can be worn casual. I mean, they have like pink gold versions.
Dressable.
Yeah, dressable.
Sorry, I just got that.
Sorry.
It's brilliant. I like it.
So they do have the full gold models that are very like luxurious and stylish. Then they also have the stainless steel ones. They also have some with the beautiful blue dial. So if you get stainless steel with either a silver dial or a blue dial, it gets more sportive, especially when you get the nice bracelet with it. So it can go either way, but it's not like per se a sports watch. And of course, I think this is always the problem for Omega, especially for the Constellation collection, especially even more so for the DeVille, is that they have that heavy competition from the Speedmaster and the Seamaster. Because that's what everybody talks about, and they're two amazing collections. But Omega is so much more. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a great highlight. So, similar to Palm, I hadn't really heard much about that range whatsoever until you brought it to our attention. And it does have that original constellation. I know it's not a constellation line, but it has that kind of look to it, to the older vintage constellations, almost the pie pan era. Apart from it's not a pie pan dial, but one which stood out to me, of course, you know how I am, the old gold with the gold bracelet with the date and day. I just think it looked awesome. I'm a fan. Again, it's just nice to highlight these pieces, as you say, that they're just under the shadow of the Speedmaster, right? Nobody's really seen these hidden treasures within the Amiga catalogue. So I think it's great that I hope on our show, our listeners can now go and check it out, and yeah, it gets the appreciation which it deserves.
But yeah, uncovering these little gems, yeah.
I also think what makes this watch particularly interesting is that it's one of the few watches where you can also see the movement from the side. And of course, it's not the most spectacular view, but just the fact that you can. The fact that it actually has the inner case is made from sapphire. I mean, try to buy a full sapphire watch. I mean, that sets you back like, what is it, like 100,000 easily? A little bit depending on the brand. So in here, you basically get at least part of that appeal at a far more affordable price range. And that movement is absolutely stunning. I just get excited when I research these pieces again. And also because when you look at the dials, Omega puts so much effort in these watches. I mean, the dials, they're really stunning. There's so much work put into it. The chronograph, it works on different levels with like slope angles for the chronograph counters. But even if you take like the basic, which is actually not that basic, but the basic three-hander with the date, you have these beautiful decorations of the dial that really give it like an extra
Just another
appeal.
question about the Our Vision. The black and silver one, is that a tuxedo dial, or are they like different layers of, or is that just a standard tuxedo?
Was one of the earlier designs that they released. I don't think they ever officially called it a tuxedo dial, but I know what you mean. It's similar like Rolex.
Kind of
used to do.
sectorish, yeah.
Yes, and honestly, it's also my favorite one because I think it really stands out. And I would match it. I would not like that one on the bracelet. I probably would get that one on a nice alligator strap in like a chestnut brown. Add a little bit more contrast to it. So
very nice.
Now you make me want to. Now what Parm said. Now I want to get one. So
I want to get one. I want to get one. And the price is amazing.
But
this is like what you call the
prices.
Value.
The prices are actually good, and it's actually quite shocking that they can go for this. Honestly, Omega kept the prices pretty much in check. It was never like an overly high-priced watch. It's more in line with the rest of Omega, which I think in today's market, actually, most of them are very good value. But if you look at the used Our Vision watches, yeah, those prices they're pretty sweet, I must say, especially for what you're getting.
I could see one for £3,450. It's beautiful, that sector type tuxedo-y dial with 41 millimeter as well, so it's not going to totally dominate your wrist.
No. I believe if you get the time only, the height is about 12 millimeters, and that increases to like 14 millimeters out of the top of my head for the annual calendar, because they needed some extra room for that complication. Funny enough, the annual calendar is not my favorite, but I love that complication. I think there's a bit of an unbalanced look because you have the big window for the month next to the smaller window for the date. And then next to that, you have the crown. I think that's too much on the right side. So I would actually prefer the time only or the chronograph.
Yeah, the day and the date next to each other. Yeah, that does kind of goes a bit Seiko-ish, I think.
But it did take me, when I saw that, it took me back to the older constellations as well. But I see what you mean with the Seiko. Just touching on the dial, I get the old bullseye because I had an old Amiga bullseye, and the way they did the dial was very similar with how they segment it. But yeah, it's a beautiful piece, a great range.
Yeah, I think Omega is especially good in taking items or elements from their rich history and give it like a modern twist and use it in new designs, which I think is great because you do safeguard the heritage, but you don't exactly copy it. So you kind of reimagine it and use today's technology to make it a great watch that fits within your history, but without duplicating it one-on-one.
Watch. Really nice.
Yeah. Excellent first choice.
So, but now I'm curious, Andy. So, what did you pick?
So, which one do I want to touch on first? I'll go into Corum. Corum as a brand, full stop. I think they deserve a bit more love. A lot of people have referred to the brand as a softer brand in the past, which I don't really agree with. I think they've got a great history. They've definitely had a golden era, which leads me to the Golden Bridge. Just a little bit of history. So Vincent Calabresi, an Italian national but a Swiss watchmaker, just the story of how the Breguet movement came to be. He had a customer. So when he was a watchmaker doing watch repairs, a customer brought in a broken Breguet minute repeater. And they had a conversation around the cost of the repair. And back then it was going to be between 800 to 1,000 chef. And basically the customer goes to Vincent, look, I'll be honest with you, who cares about the movement? Nobody looks at it. Let's just fix the case. As long as the case looks pretty, it's okay. And that just sparked this determination to say, hang on a minute, it's, the movement's one of the most important elements of a watch, full stop. And watchmaking itself is absolutely beautiful. And it really made him focus to bring the movement to the center piece of the watch. Now, the issue with the baguette style movement is to be able to make it without having two crowns. So not having the crown to set the time and the crown to wind. Why is this? Just due to the axis being on a single pillar, if you like, or baguette. You've got to work out how to make the cross barrel axis work. And long story short, he achieved this. And then in 1977, there was a inventors fair in Geneva where the Corum founder was. So René Benoit was there and he bought the patent. And then the rest is history. So in 77, he bought the patent. And then 3 years later, the Golden Bridge was born. So a little bit of a loose history, if you like, around how it came to be and a bit of a story how the inspiration came. But for me, just in general, the Golden Bridge is an incredible feat of engineering. And I just think it's beautiful. Like there's been so many different iterations through the timeline since the 80s to present date. And it's quite a different watch to which it were all the way back in the 80s. However, it still kept that original ID, and to the point now of even having an automatic Golden Bridge. And it's not like your standard pendulum, what spins around. It's actually going up and down, right? It's a whole different realm of engineering, and I absolutely think it's fantastic. Price ranges are quite crazy, so you can pick them up. If you're very lucky, I did see one for around 7K. And they're normally full sapphire cases as well, so it's beautiful. You really just see this gorgeous bridge movement in the center. However, if you want to go full-blown modern, you're talking 30 to 50K plus. But yeah, fantastic movement, fantastic story behind it, and a brand which I believe deserve a lot more love. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Good choice.
Yes, well, the Golden Bridge, I think it's such a fascinating watch. I think it's a great pick. What I do really like is the way, like you say, the case is actually shaped. Because most of the versions, they have like this little gold rim with just two pieces of sapphire connected to it. The movement is almost like floating in the middle. It's interesting, the automatic one, like you say, because the movement actually winds up, going up and down, like with little, almost like bricks that go up and down. Which kind of reminds me, I don't know if you know that, but Léon Hatot, I probably pronounced his name wrong, but he was one of the innovators. He made a lot of electric clocks, but he also made the Blancpain rolls, where it was one of the first automatic watches where the entire movement would move up and down in the case, and that was actually winding the watch. So this system always reminds me of that. I believe Tag Heuer has a similar system in one of their watches, but I forgot which one it was. I must say, the only thing that I don't like about the Golden Bridge is wearing it. And I know that this may sound strange, but it is such a beautiful watch. And then I put it on my wrist and I see all these smashed hairs of my wrist as the background. And I'm like, I don't want that. So in all honesty, if I would get a Golden Bridge, I would have a nice case constructed for it to put in my office or my living room. And I would wind it daily with a lot of love, but I would actually use it kind of like as a clock so that you can really enjoy that transparency.
Yeah, it's almost a piece.
That was
of art,
exactly
right?
what I was going to say. That was actually exactly. It's too nice because you look at your wrist, you're going to have like hair on its own as a standalone showpiece, as an exhibit. It's stunning with the the amount of transparency in there, and they've made certain versions as well which deal with that, and there's beautiful detailing on the case and stuff. It's too nice to wear, Martin.
Yes.
I think I agree. Andy, you mentioned Sven Anderson. put a watch in a bottle. It's
Yeah.
almost you look like you need to put this. It's
almost the
like
same.
that is yeah, exactly the same. The movement is in this glass bottle, or you need to put that in a case and just show everyone this is the watch, because
That's true.
it's too beautiful. That's the biggest benefit of it and the biggest downfall, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, maybe it's something more the beauty to behold as a piece to just admire, on in a case, like Martin said as well. I agree, but you can't take away just the innovation, right? And it's funny, Vincent Calabresi is also a founder of AHCI as well, which links him and Sven Anderson together.
Oh, well, there's a connection. Yeah.
If you're interested in this topic, I know that watch journalist Elizabeth Doer, she worked together with Corum and Vincent, by the way, to actually write an interesting book about the history of the Golden Bridge and how it came to life, with also all the different versions that they made. So if people are interested in the topic, it's a great way to really get to the bottom of it.
And where could you find that?
It's probably on Amazon. So and honestly, Vincent is an absolutely amazing guy. And like you say, he's one of the founders of AHCI. And for example, during big fairs like Watches and Wonders and Geneva Watch Days, the AHCI is actually exhibiting also in Geneva. But what most people don't know is that you don't have to be part of the industry to get access to it. They welcome everybody. So if you ever want to visit like legends like Vincent, but also Sven Anderson, who Parm just mentioned, I mean, they are there and you can just
that's well, when a watch has a book written about it, it's something iconic, right? That's what you call a real icon. That's a work of art, right? That's an amazing choice.
100%. Just one last thing I'll say before we move over to yours, Palm, is check out Vincent Calabresi's watches as well. They are works of art, some incredible designs, and of course is that Golden Bridge ID in quite a few of the collections.
How much are these, by the way?
Golden Bridge. Sorry, I think I touched on it, but so if you're very lucky, if you look for some of the older references, you can go from 7 all the way up, everywhere in between, up to 50k plus if you want the latest ones. If you want a really nice example, I'd say you're probably more towards 15k, and you find a great example for that price range, but worth every penny, I think, if you wear it or not, just to appreciate such great watchmaking.
It reminds me of an old table clock, as in there's something about it, that old world charm, Viennese table clock kind of.
It'd make a fantastic table, if you upscaled it. That's another idea altogether. But yeah, Palm, come on, let's get into yours.
Mine isn't as fancy. This is a sporty tool watch. So a short while ago, we did watch predictions for the next SwatchX collaboration, and one that we unearthed and which really did stick with me was Blancpain's Air Command. It's an amazing watch. It comes from the 50s, so at a time when you had a lot of innovation going on with military-inspired watches or watches made for the military. So the story behind this is the US military was so impressed with the 50 fathoms that was issued to the US Navy, the Air Force wanted a version of the watch, and they got Rainick Torvell to commission creating a watch called the Air Command for their US Air Force, but it was never seen in production. There were only 12, allegedly. There's no number known of what they actually made and why it didn't make it into production and who actually got them. But there's a big mystery behind it, but it's such an amazing watch. It's got like Omega Speedmaster 1957 vibes to it with the twin dial. I believe that's because it was made to be a pilot's watch. It also has Breguet Type 20 looks to it as well. So it really does look like real heavy hitters of watches. The price point, so what they did, they re-released it. No one knows how many were released in the first place in the 1950s, in the mid-1950s. But in 2019, they released a version called the AC01, which was amazing. It had a propeller on the sapphire case, but you see the movement, and there's a propeller on it showing that aeronautical heritage to it. And then they released a second one in 2021 called the AC02, Air Commando 2. This is more fancy. This is less tooly, less Breguet, less anything. Probably maybe where the Speedmaster 57s are going now. Trying to make them a bit more attractive, an attractive chronograph. And it's brilliant. I think it's 42 mil. It's a big watch. It's not a small one, but flyback chronograph, sword hands. The originals had sword hands, 200 meters water resistance, and you can't get away from that Type 20 vibes. The thing is, if you wanted a Type 20, it'd probably cost you less than this, because brand new, this will cost you 16,000. The 36 millimeter, and there's a 42.5 millimeter version as well, which is 17 28,100. So they're not cheap. And this is one thing I think with Blancpain that they're kind of missing a trick here. They need to kind of lower it. But I think if you want a piece of history, a piece of aeronautical history, the original one never made it out there. They don't know how many there are. Apparently the CEO, Mr. Hayek of Blancpain, has one of the original mysterious ones in his collection.
Okay.
So that's the rumor. So there's something in these, and they, again, forget the collectible ones. That's not what we're about here. We're talking about watches you don't know about and that we should be raising awareness for. And I think this Air Command is the real hidden gem.
I totally agree. It's a fascinating piece to look at. And I see all the design elements which you mentioned. So like the outer bezel for me takes me back to the 50 fathoms. And then when I look at the dial, it takes me to the Type 20.
Exactly. It encapsulates all those amazing
epic watches
from
in
that
one
era.
piece. Yeah, I agree. I think it is underappreciated. And if we put our hands up, being honest, Palm, I think we didn't really know much about it, right? Until we did the Swatch Challenge.
They did try another version, a trilogy. Was it the trilogy version, which was a bit of a disaster, I think, in the 90s? It kind of had the Rolex Yachtmaster bezel. You either like it or you don't like it. And they did a version on that one, which I don't think many people would like. But that's the best priced one for a reason. That's why, because not many people like them. But Martin, you've got an interesting fact on that bezel, on the trilogy series, I believe.
Yes, I am one of the people that actually do like it, but they had like two versions of it. They had like a plain one that was in I think it was stainless steel with the very crowded bezel that was with the numerals that were just like lasered cut out. And I still remember it must be more than 20 years ago, and it was in the Netherlands at a watch fair. But it was one of those collectors' watch fairs, so it was not a very good fair, let's put it that way. But they did have some interesting watches. They had one of the trilogy watches that you just mentioned, the Air Command. And the funny thing is, they had a version that was half steel, and the other part of the steel segments were actually coated in like rubber. But of course, that wears off, and as it gets old, it also got a little bit like a sticky touch to it. So it's. I'm pretty sure that if you send it into Blancpain, they can actually make it like brand new again. But let's put it this way, that it didn't make this particular watch age very well. But I actually do like those watches. I think Blancpain in general is a brand that's a little bit underappreciated. Of course, the 50 Fathoms is what people mostly remember it for. But like the Air Command, it's a great watch. But then again, we can also start talking about the Villeret collection of their dress watches. But that's a topic for another time. That's another show. That's a whole other show. But what I do love is indeed that it has similar vibes of the Breguet watches they made for aviation. It's just so stylish. You know, you're wearing a sports watch, but you could wear it with a nice suit these days. And it would just look awesome. So perfect pick, Parm. I totally agree.
Brilliant.
With you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to pick number 2 from yourself, Martin.
Pick number 2. My second pick is commonly known as the Longines Lindbergh. And why did I pick this watch? Well, there was a time when this watch was actually quite popular and a prominent part of Longines' collection. But as I looked last week on their website, they only have one model left. And it's the large, oversized 45 millimeter version. Beautiful, stunning, but I'm surprised that it's not more a prominent part of Longines' current offerings right now, because there's such an interesting story about it. Because we have aviation watches, and let's say that a lot of brands are quite active in promoting them with all sorts of events. But this is an actual watch that was designed by an aviation pioneer, Charles Lindbergh. It's interesting because it actually is not the only Longines that was designed by an aviation or a navigational pioneer, because that's basically what these watches are. Because before Lindbergh designed his watch, his tutor, Philip Van Horn Weems, he also designed a watch for Longines to aid in navigation. I mean, we're talking here, the 1920s. So navigation, there was no GPS. All you had was a compass and a clock. And that was how you could navigate. Of course, Lindbergh became very famous for crossing the Atlantic in a solo flight. But I mean, the only way he could navigate was with his watch. So what was mostly used then was something that was called dead reckoning, which means that you have compass, so you know which way you're flying, and you have an accurate watch that tells you how long you've been flying, and then you have your speed, in this case airspeed. So, and then you can just map out on a map where you approximately are. Of course, this doesn't really account for any side winds, so you could actually like slowly veer off your course and end up where you're not supposed to be. Of course, you could look out the window, but if you're flying over the Atlantic, that is not really helpful because there's not that much to see except the ocean. So Lindbergh, actually, after he did a successful crossing, he got in touch with the CEO of Longines at that time, and he sketched a design that would actually become the Longines Lindbergh. And officially, I believe the official term is Longines Lindbergh Hour Angle Watch, which was a great help in navigation. Don't ask me how you navigate with that, because today we're so spoiled with GPS and all that sort of thing that this type of navigation is not common knowledge anymore. So you really have to get into it to actually fully understand the watch and how you can work with it. But basically, it has a bezel that you can turn, but it also has an intersection within the dial that you can turn by moving the crown. And combined, they can help you navigate. The beauty is actually that Longines made quite a few different versions of this watch, but always stick to this concept. The most wild one was perhaps the chronograph that they did, based with the Valjoux 7750. But they also made a world timer, which was actually quite nice. But most of them were just time only with then these navigational features. The beauty is that the details of the watch are amazing because Longines obviously spent a lot of time constructing the case. And actually up until the 1990s, you could get a version where the inner dial, so the part that wasn't moving, was actually made of enamel. So really giving that old school vibe. You still get exactly that same vibe of the one that they're currently offering, but that's 45 millimeters. So for most wrists, it's a bit large. Of course, it was designed to wear over a coat, and then 45 millimeter is perfectly fine, but well, you don't really have occasions where you would wear this like that anymore. So, but I'm actually very surprised that it's not part of their current collection, because we can talk about aviation watches, but this one is designed by an aviation pioneer. So it doesn't really get much better than this.
Was this the precursor to the Navitimer then, or were they roughly the same period?
Navitimer was, I believe, later on. Also because the system the Navitimer uses is more advanced than the system that Lindbergh used. So I need to look into it, but I believe that the Navitimer could actually be more seen as like the sequel on this system. Yeah. Because it has like the calculator bezel that you can also use for much more. You can also use it for fuel consumption and all that sort of thing, which you can do with the Longines Lindbergh, because that was purely made for navigational uses. And also you have to remember that at the time when in the 1920s, I mean, planes were nothing more than an engine, some wood, and some fabric all hold together. So it was very fragile, you know. Then you got the first airplanes that used metal for the outer skin. So it was also still a very dangerous thing to fly. And that's why it was also so amazing that somebody could do it solo over the Atlantic.
Yeah, an incredible feat and an incredible watch with an amazing history. It's something what deserves to be remembered, right, for a long time to come. It's a beautiful looking watch as well. Putting the historic part aside for a moment, but the Roman numerals I really like as well.
In a way, I feel it's like the Air Command Parm I mentioned. Back then, it was like a innovative sports watch. Of course, right now, it's not that anymore, but it's a very stylish piece of history. You could get it on a strap, but Longines also had this beautiful bead bracelet that you could get with it. And it looks absolutely stunning. And if you wear it on that, what I think is so amazing is like you can get a good one right now for like 1,500 euros.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
So exactly, that's amazing. You can beat that value almost. You have a stylish piece of not only watch history, but also aviation history.
Yeah, I think 100%. It's an incredible piece.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
One to look out. Longines as well for our friend
Yeah.
Gang Horology. Check that one out.
Yeah.
He's a big Longines
Was-
fan. And also the Instagram. Check out the Instagram
course.
because what we're saying might not be. We may not be describing it as well as
the
a
pictures be
book,
there.
as a
Pictures be
visual
there for
picture
sure,
can.
yeah. Yeah, I love the oversized crown as well, and yeah, we'll definitely put the pictures there. It's a great,
Beautiful.
it's so unique as well. It's instantly recognizable.
I'm glad you mentioned the crown, Andy, because I forgot that. That was because it has a beautiful onion crown. Another feature that many of these watches have is that they have a closed case back with a little button on the side. So if you pushed it, the case back pops open, and then you can actually admire the movement. And usually on the other side, there's like this engraving with either patent numbers or a reference to Charles Lindbergh. So, but I'm actually curious, Andy, now, what is your second choice?
So, Martin, I believe you're a huge fan of a reference which I'm going to go to, the IWC Da Vinci. Like before, just to give a little bit of background and history, the IWC Da Vinci was introduced back in 1969 with the reference 3501, which was actually one of the first Beta 21 watches to hit the scene. Now, what is a Beta 21? Well, just for some of the listeners who might not know, it was 21 Swiss watch manufacturers who all came together in the heat of the quartz crisis to make the Swiss quartz rival to what they were being hit by from the Japanese market. So a really cool piece in its own right. And then it lives up to the name, Da Vinci, innovation, the search for perfection of beauty and engineering. And moving forward, we've got to talk about Kurt Klaus and the way he set the bar in how to use and set a perpetual calendar. Just brilliant how he created this amazing module which fit on the Valjoux 7750. And from this heavily modified, of course, Valjoux, he was able to create a perpetual calendar where you can easily set it just with the crown. Now, even when you look over to bigger brands such as Patek, they have this little side pin pushes to do all the different adjustments. So it was a feat of engineering in its own right. And that came as well in 1985 in the peak of the quartz crisis. And what a bold move to do that. So the original release or reference was the 3750. And then, from there's been many iterations moving forward. I believe from 2017 onwards, they moved to an in-house movement. And my favorite reference would have to be the 3754 Ratapante. I just think it's absolutely incredible. It was made in platinum and yellow gold, released in 1995. That just really does it for me. But in general, just talking about that whole collection, I love the design, the lug design. Now it's changed a little bit on the modern iterations, but I think it's an incredible piece. You can pick up the Valjoux references for, around 10K. That's incredible value. Find me another perpetual calendar for that quality, that innovation, that usability and style for that price point. I absolutely love them. And I'm going to stop talking because Martin knows far more than me, and this is where I'll hand over to the expert.
I'm a big fan of the Da Vinci. I think it's so interesting that it was once used. Initially, the name was used for a quartz watch, but later on, it actually became a watch. I mean, it's one of the watches that I actually think of when you tell me the renaissance of Swiss watchmaking after the quartz crisis. It was very clever because Kurt Klaus basically was sent on a mission impossible, because things were not going that well at the moment at IWC, and they needed something big to make a comeback, and they needed a complication, but they didn't have time or money to make an entire movement on it. So he basically took the 7750 and works a way to make a module that could actually be attached onto the Valjoux 7750, giving it not only a perpetual calendar, but also maintaining the chronograph complication of the caliber. So, and the funny thing is actually, if I may add to that, because when the Da Vinci perpetual calendar turned 10, it also got its 10th hand, because then IWC launched the Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar Rattrapante. So all of a sudden it had 2 seconds hands for the chronograph function. Interesting to know is that complication was developed for IWC by Richard Habring. He's now quite a famous independent. Back then, he was working at IWC, and he developed the Rotrobot. What I think is very, very beautiful about the Da Vinci is the way the case is designed. It has those hooded lugs, and then it has like these different tiers in the case. Which is also, they also did that just to hide the thickness of the watch. Because when it's on the wrist, it's really substantial, which is quite an enjoyable feeling. But the beauty is indeed, because it has such a case and there are no correctors on the side, and you can do everything with the crown, it's very user-friendly and beautiful at the same time. And I think IWC and Grubel 4C are the only two that have a perpetual calendar where you can set everything by the crown. There might be one or two more, but that's from smaller independent brands. But most of the major brands, when they make a perpetual calendar, you have all these complex correctors that are kind of messing up the case or the smooth finish of the case, which is perhaps also one of the reasons why I'm always quite enamored about the Da Vinci.
I was just going to say, there's not much I could add to what Martin just said. So I think it's the kind of watch that amazing complication, underappreciated. There are some watches that take you away. I'm a lot into aesthetics, and this is a kind of watch that sort of takes you away to a different era. And just the way it's done, it's so correct in every way. IWC are famous for their perpetual calendars. Even to this day, they're putting them into their Top Gun collection. So they really are using that complication and giving it the push to the forefront that it deserves. But this is like a piece of history to me, and that's pretty much what I'd say on it. It's a beautiful gold bracelet, and the yellow gold for me with that, is it a 5-link or 7-link bracelet? I'm not sure, but seven amazing vibes that just, like I say, take you to a different place, a nice, dreamy place. It's been brought to my attention by yourself and by Martin as well. It's something that's really, it's one of those, there's so many watches like this that we just don't know about, and this is what we're trying to do. Just get them out there into the open, and people just gain an awareness like we're gaining.
Yeah, every day is a new lesson, right? And Pam, I think you're about to give us a new lesson.
No, mine's basic. Mine will close the show very nicely and quickly. And I did kind of throw in the aesthetic part on purpose just now. It's true, but then it's actually relevant to the watch I'm going to tell you about. So this watch, it's a Panerai Luminor. It's the Panerai Luminor Luna Rossa PAM 01342. And for me, the reason why I think this isn't as appreciated as it should be, because to me, this is probably one of the best looking sports watches I personally have seen. It's just that it's got a white sandwich dial with grey undertones, recessed into the grey sandwich part. Beautiful steel case, a red small seconds hand, and just regular stick hands. And it's so simple, but it's just so Italian. This takes you to Panerai are from Florence, Firenze, and it takes you to the Amalfi Coast. It takes you to one of the amazing beaches you would find in Italy. It reminds me of my favorite beach I've been to in Italy was in Sardinia, Golfo Aranci. And it's just something there because it has a yachting connection with the Luna Rossa, the Red Line. And it also has connections with Prada. They won the Prada Cup. So there's those three, the yachting, Prada, and Panerai here. It's almost an amalgamation of those three. Open seas, nice and relaxed. The reason why I liked that beach in Golfo Aranci, because it was the most fun beach I think I'd ever been to. It wasn't people showing off they'd been working out to go on holiday, bikini bodies. It was just people enjoying being out in the sun with their family, with their friends, having fun. The most chilled out, relaxed place. And this is something you can wear. It just, again, it takes me away to the sea, a beautiful beach, sitting on a boat, enjoying it. Not to have a boat, but there's something so stylish, Italian, effortlessly Italian, sprezzatura, where you put in a lot of effort, but it's not supposed to look like you've put a lot of effort in. It's supposed to look very relaxed and very natural. And you can tell a lot went into designing the look of this watch. It's stainless steel, it's 44mm, but I believe Panerai do 44mm like no one else, because having tried a few on, they do sit so well. And just this one, every time I've seen this in a case and I've tried it on, it just stands out. There could be 20 watches in a case. This is the one my line of sight would home in on first. And it's purely on the aesthetics. I have to admit, I'm probably not impressing my two friends here. but to me, it just covers all those things.
It's a typical palm watch, and I love it. And why do I say that? It's just that Explorer white dial theme and a great white Omega Seamaster as well. I think you've got a bit of a thing for these fresh, clean aesthetics on a watch and this fresh face to a watch as well. And I think it's a great choice. So I don't disapprove. I really like it. I think it's a really crisp looking piece, but I'd love to know Martin's opinion.
What I like about this piece is, of course, it checked all the boxes. You got a good movement, you got a good finish. So the baseline, it's okay, but then it gets the aesthetic right. And I feel a lot of people buy watches for history, or because they're famous, or because they were used to achieve certain things, or they're marketed very well because of that. But sometimes it's nice to just go for the looks, because that in the end is why you sometimes fall in love with a watch. But I also believe that this is one of those designs that has staying power. It's interesting enough to keep you in love, but it will also age very nicely. So if you wear it like 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's still a great looking watch. People still look like, wow, oh, that's awesome. So I completely agree with you, Parm. And I think maybe we should do another show where we actually talk about watches that might be under the radar, but for aesthetic reasons should actually be on top of much more watch collectors' lists. Because there are actually quite a few watches that I think are like this Panerai, underappreciated, while their great looks actually warrant more than that.
That's a great idea. I think that's winning. But also, I just want to add, you can get this pre-owned for £4,500. Brand new, I think it's just over 6. It's like I say, I'm not saying that taking this lightly. I don't need to make this up, but it just is one of the coolest watches I've seen. And you're right, Andy, that white dial. I don't know. There's something about me and white dials now. Well, maybe not now.
Always has been, I think, but it's fresh. It's crisp. It's cool. That Italian connection, which I know you like as well. So it makes sense.
That's all 3. How was it, gents? How did you feel? I've got to say, I loved all the choices you both made. Really eye-opening, really sound, solid choices with history, looks, everything. Very good. And I think we certainly have raised some awareness today. What do you guys think?
I think so too. I've really enjoyed this show. I think this is also not the last time we will touch on this topic, because there are many, many, many more watches just like this. So it was great talking to you, as always.
Absolutely. Fantastic choices. A pleasure, as always, gentlemen. And I think with that, we need to do the classic sign-off. So from my side, as always, please remember to check out our Instagram, chrono_passion_7. We'll have all the show notes there with all the great images of these absolutely incredible pieces, where I'm sure the watch will explain itself even better than what we can sometimes just by looking at those stunning pieces. So that is goodbye from me for today's show.
Thank you once again, Martin, for joining us, and hopefully we will have you on many more. Again, thank you for today, and we really do hope you enjoyed it.
I did for sure. It was awesome. Thank you again,
Pleasure.
gents.
Excellent, no problem. And we'll have you on again very, very soon. So that's us done for another show and another day. So we'll see you, and you'll hear us in the next one.